I'm used to having a headpiece on at this time. If you haven't grabbed a packet that were back at the doors, make sure that you grab a packet back by the doors. There's the bylaws that we'll be looking at, as well as the financial report. And so thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for those who are joining us online. And at this time, I'm going to recognize Dave Carpenter, who will call us into session and lead us through our business meeting.
Well, let's begin tonight. Let me pray for us as we open. Father in heaven, we're so grateful to be together with other believers to first of all proclaim that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Lord, we're so grateful for the finished work of Christ on the cross, and so grateful for the resurrection and the fact that we have eternal life and hope in Him plus nothing. Thank you for our church, our staff, our members. Lord, I pray your richest blessings upon their lives. I pray your goodness and mercies be extended to their families, that we would walk with you and live and move and have our being with you and be the church out in our community in Beaumont, Texas. I do pray for revival to begin right here among us in Beaumont, Texas, and for that revival to spread all across our city, across our state, and across our nation. We love you tonight. Give us wisdom as we look at some business things regarding the church, and we're so grateful for all you've done for us. In Jesus' name, amen. If you'll notice, if you have an agenda, if you picked up, there's some out there if you didn't get one, the agenda. If you'll turn the page, the back page of our agenda is the minutes from our previous business meeting, which was back in January. And you'll remember those. Those stand as written. If you look on page 2, there down at the bottom, you see that we had a follow-up business meeting. That wasn't technically a business meeting. We, in fact, it was just a paper ballot, and that where we voted on the next 50. And if you remember, that passed with unanimous consent there. And so the minutes stand as written there. And secondly, tonight we'll have our financial report. Brad.
Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to see you all. And you do see your financial report, the balance sheet there, followed by the financial activity. But this first page, I have a few objections to make about the transfer of letters. Can we address those?
If you would have read your agenda, you'll see that that's item 3.
Okay, I'm just the financial guy. But anyway, so your financial statement, the balance sheet, you'll see some big numbers there. We're in very good financial position. In net assets, you see without restrictions, they're over $1 million. That's cash in the bank. Now, you know the church has voted on the next 50. We'll be moving some of those funds, most of those funds, to reserves for that project. And that leaves us, what is in restrictions now in this financial statement is the over $500,000 is $583,000 that have restrictions. Of that, we have $500,000 in restrictions just for a reserve, in case bad things happen, pandemic or hurricane, like nothing like that's going to happen, but we're ready for it. So we have $500,000 in reserves, knowing if there's a shortfall, we can get there. We aren't in a shortfall today. You may see on your financial activity, you may see at the bottom line that we have spent to date through March, we have spent more than we've taken in. And this happens some years that we're short on receipts as the year begins, and we're spending our budget mostly toward staff and operations. That is sustainable. And I mentioned to you the large reserves we have backing that. we can sustain this, and as we wait for the congregation to be more faithful in their giving. But so what I like to do when I track the spending, you'll see toward budget. If you see anything that has like a 25% number or less, since we're 1/4 of the way through the year, we're okay. We're spending toward a budget. So with that, church, I want to say that we're in excellent financial shape. We're prepared for the days ahead, and we're spending on budget.
So that comes from a committee, so the financial report comes from a committee, doesn't need a second. So is there any discussion? Brad said he'll answer any questions that you may have regarding the financial report before we vote.
Yes, as Dave said, your stewardship committee met on April 11th and reviewed these numbers and other matters.
Appears there's no questions, so all in favor of accepting our financial report as presented by Brad, say aye. Any opposed? Thanks. The third item on our agenda is the church membership request. That's on the agenda page down just below. You notice by baptism letter or statement we have none coming in. We do have some transfer of letters. You see that. Gail Jones, John and Virginia Roberts, Todd and Jenny Sutherland, and Lance and Bethany Way are transferring. So we'll need to have a vote to grant those transfers of letters. But we don't. Do we need I'm sorry. We need a motion, I guess, and a second for that. Bill Cook. All right, anything about that before we... You want to oppose the transfer of the letter? Yes, please. Well, I suppose you can do that. Of course, you can. Anyone can vote in favor of or opposed to. So we have a motion. Any other discussion about this? All in favor of granting these transfers of letters, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. All right. They will be granted. The transfer of letter passes and will be granted. The next item is some Constitution and bylaws. There have been some changes that were made. Jeff is going to address those and talk to us about those, the changes to our Constitution and bylaws.
Now for the exciting part of the business meeting. First of all, I want to thank Bert Brown and Jeff Alford and Janet Stewart for making up the ad hoc committee who brings this as a recommendation to you. And you see the recommendation there on your agenda. And but what I would like to do is to briefly walk you through the changes that were made. There really weren't any major changes that were made. We basically got the Constitution and bylaws up to date to the way that Westgate is currently conducting its business. And so, and if you don't have a copy of the Constitution and bylaws, those were at the door as well, and you can grab one of those. On the first page, the only changes that were made on the first page were under Section 2 of Article 1. This church shall, through the cooperative program, cooperate with the Golden Baptist, that used to say Triangle, and now it's the Golden Triangle Baptist Network. It used to be the Golden Triangle Baptist Association. Now it's a network. Don't ask me to define what the difference or changes in that is. It's just the name. And so We changed that to be in compliance with what their actual title is. And then the other change made on page 1 is there in Article 2 in our Articles of Faith. The supreme authority for the doctrine and conduct of this church shall be the Holy Bible. Many of the Articles of Faith are summarized in the Baptist Faith and Message adopted by the Southern Baptist Convention in 1963, reaffirmed in 1970, and then amended in 2000. And the 2000 is what has been added. The last time our Constitution and bylaws were updated was 96, and so the Baptist Faith and Message has been amended since then. And the main reason we want to include this is because of the Baptist Faith and Message, their statement on the family. And if you're keeping up with any political news, any news whatsoever, you will know how important it is for churches to make clear what their stance is on the family, on marriage, and other issues. And so we'll see some of that throughout the remainder of the Constitution and bylaws. So moving on, the next change I would draw your attention to would be all the way over to Article 4 of the deacons. And the change that we made there is in Section A. It used to state that a deacon candidate had to be a member of Westgate for 6 months, and we extended that to a year to be in line with the Constitution states that somebody who is coming as a deacon from another church, that they must wait a year before being able to be activated as a deacon here. So we brought those numbers in alignment with each other. So that is the only change under the area of deacons. Moving on to Article 5, under officers. There in the beginning statement, all church officers shall be members in good standing and nominated by the Committee on Committees. That used to be would be nominated by the nominating committee. Well, the nominating committee no longer exists, and so the Committee on Committees has taken on their duties. And so that's the change that has been made there. And then the moderator, the definition of moderator has stayed the same. The definition for treasurer has actually been expanded. The job description for the treasurer has actually been expanded there to include the duties that the treasurer is actually taking, being an ex officio member of the stewardship committee and working with our financial secretary in the keeping of our records. And then the definition of the clerk has actually been shrunk. The clerk, the definition of the clerk was actually representative of when we did not have a full administrative assistant staff. And so the definition of the clerk was keeping all kinds of membership records and all kinds of things that now our administrative assistants take care of. And so the definition of the clerk has been, and saying reduced is, not a negative thing, but it just matches what the clerk does, and that is basically take minutes of our business meetings and keep those on file for us in times of when we need to refer back to them. Any questions up to this point, or if you have a question about something, if I've gone by something that you've read and want to ask a question about, or something that I address and you have a question about, make sure, holler out if I'm not looking up, and we'll address those. So any questions up to this point? Yes, sir. Okay, the moderator is Dave Carpenter, and the church treasurer at this time is Brad Brown, and our current church clerk is Dawn Graff, who is our financial assistant, administrative assistant. Yes, sir.
Just to make sure I'm reading this right. So, under Article 5, under officers there, it says all church officers shall be members in good standing. But I'm sorry, I didn't remember, is Dawn a member?
Right. Dawn is not a member, and that's we when we go back and forth on that, as far as we had the debate about should the administrative assistant who handles the finances, should they be a member, should they not be a member, and so. Yeah, that will be something we'll need to, we'll need to address, because there's a lot of time, and it's a change that hasn't been made since she moved to Conroe. She actually commutes back and forth to Conroe to work here. That's how good an employer we are, and so, but she's not able to always, like tonight, she's not able, to be here, and so we're recording it, and she'll be able to transcribe everything, but we will need to make that change to where it's somebody. Janet Stewart was our church clerk for years, and now that she's back, she could pick up right where she left off. I'll have to visit with her about that, and so I'll have to pass that on to the Committee on Committees after we approve this, so that I can pass it on to the Committee on Committees. Any other questions?
Yes, Jeff.
Yes, sir. Right, and that is language that, some of the language is just language that came over from one, and yeah, because that's basically what it is that you and the stewardship committee, look at the year-end finances, and then when we present, the year-end report, that's basically. So it would be easy enough to change the language there.
Review is a special term as well.
So annual.
Look-see, I like look-see. Tally, annual tally, is that where?
Well, the first term that you used was accounting. Is that the appropriate term to use? Okay. Okay, so the question was in number 2 of Article 5 under officers in the treasurer's. It says, upon rendering the annual audit account at the end, and we actually don't do an audit at the end of the year. We do an accounting at the end of the year, and so Brad is suggesting that we change that wording to that an audit is a specific measure that you take. It's a Yeah, there are procedures that we would have to engage in that we don't currently engage in, but our process is to do an accounting at the end of the year to make sure that everything balances, and then that accounting is presented to the church. Well, it would be voted on. It would be voted on, it'd be voted on when we vote on the document. Yeah. All right, any other questions up to the point of officers? Okay, moving on to committees. Here, so the changes that took place in the committees is the committee guidelines were added. So A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, those items were added. All committees shall consist of at least 3 members, but no more than 6. Terms of service will be either for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. No one may serve for more than 3 consecutive years on the same committee and may not serve on more than one committee simultaneously. The chairman must have served on the committee the previous year and may only serve in that capacity for 1 year. No more than 1 family member per committee. At least 1 deacon must serve on each committee. Minutes are to be taken and submitted as part of church record keeping. So these are practices that have been in place. They just have not been spelled out in the Constitution and bylaws. And so now it gives us something to refer back to if our process is ever questioned. So those were added in print. And then as far as the committees themselves, well, let me say, any questions about those guidelines? Okay, then the committees themselves, the changes that were made there is committees that were no longer being used have been removed from the Constitution and bylaws. Does anybody want to know what those are? Okay. If you do, see me afterwards, and I can tell you which committees are no longer in process. Pretty much all of the definitions have stayed the same. The only one that had changes to it or significant changes to it was the Personnel Committee, and we took these statements were already in the Constitution and bylaws, but were under a different section, and we moved them up underneath the Personnel Committee because they are the ones that would take care of those items, and mainly it's the keeping, the maintaining of a personnel manual. And so we just moved those up underneath the definition of the Personnel Committee. Any question about the committees? Okay, moving on. Under the personnel section, in the old Constitution and bylaws, there were job descriptions that were listed for the Mother's Day Out director, the nursery coordinator, nursery workers, and Mother's Day Out workers. And no, non-members cannot serve on a committee. And hang on, let me go back. That is not specifically stated in the Constitution or in the bylaws in this section. It's definitely something that we can add. It's how we function. Well, that doesn't mean church members. That means committee members.
And put the word church in front of members.
Yeah, I mean that would be an easy enough. Fix. When this was presented to the deacons for approval before coming here, there was language in there that would allow non-members to serve on a committee, but they could not serve as a chairman. and the deacons voted to remove that language from this, and that we would operate that only church members could serve on committees. Now, in the past, we have voted and we have made exceptions, to that rule, and so, but we can definitely, we can definitely make sure that that wording is in here to clarify that. Right. Yeah, we would just simply insert the word church there, and that would cover that that question. Right. And so we can insert that there. So if you want to just note that that the word church would be inserted at that point. Any other questions? Any other questions about that? Okay, so back to the personnel section. The job descriptions for Mother's Day Out, nursery, those were taken out of the Constitution and bylaws and were moved over into the personnel policies where they belong. The only job description that is listed in the personnel manual at any specificity is the pastor, and so all other job descriptions are found in the personnel policies, and so that's where those items were moved because that's where they belong. And I'm assuming that probably took place when Westgate initiated their Mother's Day Out program and created that. And so anyway, just cleaning up that section. Any questions about the personnel area? Okay, under church finance, there were no changes that were made. We did discover some things that we had gotten away from, and that has to deal with our Christmas offering. Somewhere along the lines, we had started giving all of our Christmas offering to Lottie Moon, and that's not what we're supposed to be doing. And so by going back through this document, we realized how we were supposed to be dividing that money up, and you can see that listed there. So it all goes to missions. It just doesn't all go to foreign missions. And so any questions about finances? Okay, moving on, our meetings and procedures. We did make the change that our business meetings, regular business meetings of the church shall be held on a bi-monthly basis. The previous one said on a monthly basis, and we've been doing bi-monthly business meetings for some time now. It talks about how a special business meeting comes about. All of that is original to the previous Constitution and bylaws. The other change that we made is a quorum shall be defined as those members who are present. And so as business meetings have gotten a lot less popular, we need to be able to conduct business with those who are willing to come, and yet there are protections in there. You could say, well, that's kind of dangerous, but there are other things in there to protect just any business meeting being called by any people to do any kind of business. And so there are protections in there, to where just 5 people can't get together and say, hey, we're going to kick somebody out of the church, or whatever else the case may be. So any questions about meetings and procedures?
A quorum does not anticipate a virtual attendance. Article 9, number 4.
Say that again.
A quorum does not anticipate a virtual attendance.
Because it says present, but instead of, you're saying it says present instead of, in case we have a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a question. It's the committee who brought this one. Do they anticipate anyone attending virtually?
Well, we have people attending virtually tonight.
Do they count as a quorum and may they vote?
Under the old Constitution and bylaws, no. And in the, in the day and age that we're in now, I mean, it would have to be stated that, the way that it is put forth right now. The question is, for those of you who are with us virtually, the question is does the Constitution and bylaw allow for virtual attendance and virtual voting? Well,
How would we know? And two, they would have to send all votes to someone who is here.
okay, and that has occurred with our last business meeting. Virtual attendance was allowed, and they were allowed to, if you remember, you received a ballot in the mail, and you could, send your ballot into the church office. So we have allowed for virtual attendance, and that would be. It's just a matter of how big a corner or how small a corner we want to paint ourselves into. Yes, Bert.
Yeah, we just leave it like it is. Number 5, Article 9, does not define majority vote. So the answer is yes, you can vote virtually or by mail. It's a vote. And majority rules. So I say that it is covered to do virtual voting.
Yes, and if you wanted to get nitpicky, it doesn't say a quorum shall be defined by those members physically present. And so they're virtually present, we're physically present, so I think we're safe there. Sam?
What you described to me sounds more like absentee voting rather than virtual voting.
Well, it was kind of, yeah, you could put that definition because, virtual voting would be they would, I guess, be texting it in or, real time.
I think it's whatever the moderator makes it. That's why we have a moderator. He can interpret the vote as
And you're correct, Bert. I mean, because if you go back and you look at the definition of the moderator, the definition of the moderator shall interpret the bylaws if any ambiguity is found or dispute arises over the meaning. And so, well, hopefully we're going to get past this and we're not going to have to do virtual. Yeah, so I think we can be safe in leaving it as is. Well, we would have to set up something for those who are attending virtually to be able to submit their vote in real time, whether through I mean, you can do that through text messaging, very easily. That those who are attending virtually, submit, we provide them a specific number to text their vote to, and just like Warren has been, those questions that Warren have been submitting to me are people who are texting questions to him who are watching online. And we could do a Zoom meeting to where it allows people to vote in real time as well. Well, it would be at that time. I can't foresee us doing another, and of course I'm going to say this, and it's going to come up. When we did the vote on the next 50, that was a big enough thing that was going to affect the whole, it was going to affect the whole church body, and we needed to have as much input on that as possible, so that there weren't people out there who felt like they didn't have a voice in it. And of course, we were in stricter, we were under stricter guidelines at that time. And so, we did allow people to mail in voting. I would say for most business meetings like tonight, it would be the voting would take place, at that time. There wouldn't be, hey, we'll come back with you to let you know what the vote is. But the virtual voting would take place at the same time that our voting here is taking place. Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. And that's what we intended it to be. Right. Yes, you're correct. And so does that answer your questions, Mike? Well, right. It would. I mean, it would take place. When the moderator calls for the vote, those people who are watching online would submit their vote at that time, and. Right. Right. Correct.
We've had various kinds of votes over the years, and the moderator, the staff, and the deacons, but the moderator is always the one that's kind of in charge of it. And some of those have been by secret ballots, some have been hand counted, and it's kind of what the moderator feels is appropriate for this question. And anyway, I don't know that we need to specify because it depends on his understanding of what's fair.
Yeah. All right, everybody good? Okay, moving on. Let me make sure I'm checking my notes here. So I think the quorum was the last change. Well, no, I'm sorry. It wasn't the last change. Let me move you forward to number 9 under Article number 9. We have a definition there on weddings and receptions. In accordance with the Baptist faith and message, Westgate Memorial believes marriage is the uniting of one man and one woman in covenant commitment. Therefore, Westgate Memorial Baptist will only host and conduct weddings and or receptions that hold to this biblical standard. And so not only do we have it through the Baptist faith and message, but we've now made a specific statement within our Constitution and bylaws. And then if you look at number 10, the use of the church property, Westgate Memorial Baptist reserves the right to refuse the use of its property and or facilities to groups that do not reflect the biblical standards set forth in the Baptist faith and message. And this is all very timely. Just today, I got from our insurance company a big packet on how to protect yourself from lawsuits that fall into these types of things. And one of the things that it suggests is to make sure that your constitution and bylaw specifically states what your stance is on these issues. I know we never thought we would ever be at this point, but we are. And, we will, we won't be amending our constitution and bylaws on a regular basis, but we will be making sure that we have policies in place, that reflect who we are as a Southern Baptist, as a God-fearing Christian congregation. And so, right now the Methodist denomination is very embroiled in this very type of thing, and their next national meeting, there may no longer be a Methodist denomination, with the churches that are threatening to walk away because of the liberalism that has so infiltrated their denomination. And so those two statements have been added to our Constitution and bylaws to where we can stand on those beliefs. Any questions about that? All transgender or those types of issues refer to our treasurer. Okay, finally, under Article 10, Adoption, Constitution, and Bylaws, there was nothing changed under that section. And then upon approval, we'll simply add today's date at the bottom of this document to show when it was last amended. Any further questions? Hang on, Ryan.
As moderator, I do have one.
Okay. Okay.
Now, are we voting on this document tonight?
Correct.
Not the one that may have some amendments coming up?
Well,
Church member being-
well, no, those. If I remember, and Sam, you can probably help me out with this, maybe. If I remember my Robert's Rules of Orders, we probably need a motion and a second to accept the changes that have been made to this document tonight. Well, hang on. We got to get our moderator back in charge here. And then we would vote on the motion that is before us to accept that document, this document as changed.
When those changes were made.
Right.
So we'll have another meeting.
No. We can do that tonight. So come on back up.
As I recall, when amendments are made, the amendments need to be voted on
Right.
at that time.
Because
and
we're
they're either
amending
included
this.
or excluded from the final motion.
Okay, so then what we'll do is we'll approve this, and then we'll ask for a and I believe.
So you start with the amendments.
We'll start with the amendment.
Each amendment needs to be approved or rejected. And once it's approved, then it becomes part of the motion, which will finally be voted on.
Okay, all right. So we had two amendments.
Yeah, at least, I think. But I think they were just related to, I didn't make notes of them as we were talking about them. But I can make a motion.
So we had the first amendment was to committees to insert the word church.
Under Article 6. So we'll need a motion to amend Article 6 under committees. Number 1, line A, all committees shall consist of at least 3 church members. Now, by the way, we're sure that's what we want to do, right? 3 church, so the word church would be inserted there. So that will be, I'll need that amendment.
I make a motion to accept that.
Do I hear a second? All right, any discussion on that?
Who was the second?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike, wasn't it? Then we now vote on that amendment. We vote on the amendment. So all in favor of that amendment to add the word church in front of members under Article 6, number 1, all in favor of that say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that amendment passes.
Okay, then the other one was to change the word audit to accounting
That was,
under finance. Under article.
that's going to be under, no. It was under the, under
Officer,
under treasurer. 5. Right. So if you look at Article 5, under number 2, treasurer, Brad brought up that we're not doing an annual audit. So if you go down about midway through that paragraph, you'll see the sentence beginning with the word upon. And upon rendering the annual, and we're going to strike audit and add accounting. Do you want to make that motion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Moderator, that is my motion to strike the word audit and use the word accounting.
Well, the account is already in that sentence.
Strike audit account. Strike
Use the word
audit account, replace it with account.
Annual accounting.
Oh. So strike both, audit and account. I got you. All right, so that motion has been made. Do we have a second to that? Sam seconds that. Any discussion about that? All in favor of that amendment say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that amendment passes. Those were the only 2. And did you have anything else on?
Nope.
Is there any other, so we have now a recommendation from an ad hoc committee, which does not need a second, coming from this doesn't need a second, coming from an ad hoc committee on this, to approve the new bylaws, Constitution and bylaws. Is there any further discussion on that? Ready to vote? All in favor of these changes and as of adopting the new Constitution and bylaws and the updated Constitution and bylaws say aye. Aye. Any opposed to that? That passes. And I believe, Jeff, the last thing was announcements. And do you have any?
Just an announcement for you to keep you up to speed where we are on the next 50. Things are in the works. We're working with Ford, who will be doing the audio visual work, getting everything put together, getting ready for them to start. Our last Sunday here in the sanctuary will be Sunday, July the 4th. And so we will relocate to the gym for probably 6 to 8 weeks. And if you're wondering, well, where's Sojourn going? Well, Sojourn has actually purchased property over on Lucas, and so they are in the process of getting that property renovated and everything, getting ready to move into their own facility. And so be praying that their timeline and our timeline matches up, because that's the plan as of right now. And but things are under works, are in the works as far as moving forward with the next 50. And so you can kind of help, spread that word so people can be in the loop. So things are moving forward with that, and this summer the sanctuary will get a facelift, and so things are looking good there.
Are there any other announcements tonight? Thanks, everyone, for being here. I know this was a little longer business meeting than what we normally have. And as moderator, I think I can declare that we're adjourned.